Afternoon and welcome to Chatham House. It's a pleasure to welcome Premier Danielle Smith here for a conversation about Alberta, Alberta's role within Canada, and Alberta's role in the world. My name is Laurel Rap, and I'm the director of the U.S. and North America program here at Chatham House. Within this program, we look at the changing role of the U.S. and Canada in the world, what these changes mean for partners, and how durable these changes are over time. I will remind you that today's discussion is on the record. It's being live streamed. We will be in conversation for about 30 to 35 minutes, but then we want to leave ample time for questions and answers for the second half of our program. The Premier will also begin with brief remarks at the podium after a brief introduction from me. So welcome, Premier Smith. Danielle Smith is a proud Albertan. As leader of the governing United Conservative Party, she was sworn in as the 19th Premier of Alberta on October 11th, 2022. She represents the riding of Brooks Medicine Hat in the Legislative Assembly. Before re-entering politics, Ms. Smith worked extensively in the media and in business, most recently as president of the Alberta Enterprise Group. Before that, she was a radio host with Chorus Entertainment for 6 years. And Premier, under your leadership, Alberta has forged a very assertive path, both with Ottawa and in the world, at a moment when Canada is redefining its role and its relationships with partners and allies both near and far. And Alberta is doing this in a couple of different ways, pushing back on federal regulations in some ways, offering independent views on policies around energy and pipelines, trade strategy, and also fostering closer relationships with neighbors to the south. And you are doing this from a position of strength as an energy leader of Canada. The vast majority of Canada's oil and natural gas come from Alberta. And so at a time when Prime Minister Carney is seeking to diversify partnerships beyond just the US, you have a lot of cards to play in this conversation. So you have lots on your plate, energy projects, dynamics with Washington, trade negotiations that will begin with Mexico and Washington in the coming months, and then a referendum on and an independence movement for the province of Alberta as well. So we're delighted to host you here today to hear your perspective on these issues and to get into the details. Please.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Laurel, for the very kind introduction. And I was telling Laurel when I got here, I've been hearing about Chatham House rules ever since I got involved in public policy. And here I am in Chatham House, and we don't have Chatham House rules. We're going to be having this live stream. But there is a plaque, I've been told, upstairs that has the rule written on it. So I'm going to go and make sure I get a picture taken with that. And I am very grateful for the opportunity to speak at Chatham House and for the warm welcome. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. We have a lot to talk about because we have a lot in common. Canada and the UK are bound by history and values and goals and a shared head of state. And I notice His Majesty is in North America today as I am over here, reminding the US President that he is the head of state of Canada as well. And at the top of our list of shared priorities, of course, is energy security. Concerns about security of supply aren't new, but recent global disruptions have reinforced a single point, that where energy comes from matters more than ever. And Alberta is the most promising, and practical solution. Our province has enough energy within our borders to help meet growing global demand for decades. We have more than 177 billion barrels of recoverable oil at today's price and today's technology. That makes us the fourth largest reserve on Earth. We're approaching 5 million barrels a day of oil production. And our goal, which I stated a couple of years ago, was to get to 8 million barrels per day. Alberta's proven and probable natural gas reserves also have increased. We are now at 144 trillion cubic feet. And with that revision to our reserve estimate, that has moved Canada into the top 10 natural gas reserves worldwide. We're expanding our natural gas liquids, propane, butane, ethane. We're expanding our hydrogen industry, and we even have helium as well. For Canada, the missing ingredients clearly is not resources, it's the infrastructure to extract and to move commodities to markets. Our energy industry is mature with incredibly secure and resilient supply chains and growing connections to overseas markets. Alberta is keen to build new pipelines, west, east, north, and south, without delay and without hesitation, to supply Asian and European and American markets with safe, reliable, and responsibly produced energy products. And our province has recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Canadian federal government that will help us do just that. It is a huge win for the world. With more outlets for our energy, the result will be less dependence on dictators and less choke points for oil and gas. Plus, every last drop is produced in line with the highest environmental and labor standards, because our cutting-edge technologies are reducing Alberta's emissions while meeting more of the world's growing needs. We have established carbon capture, utilization, and storage at scale, as well as pilot projects for direct air capture, so that you do have a safe, secure, and reliable partner that you can count on for decades to come. But it also applies to other resources as well. We are leaders in renewable energy. We have more installed wind and solar in our grid, in our region of Canada than any other province. We also have growing geothermal. In fact, I was here in, our first stop was in Germany, where we have an installation by Ever as an initial geothermal a project that's going to use modern new technology developed as a result of some of the drilling technology and engineering that we have in Alberta. And Canada also has abundant reserves of critical minerals. And here again, Alberta is out in front. Recent land surveys in our province have confirmed that we have some of the largest lithium reserves on the planet. We value it at probably about $1 trillion at today's technology from the brines that are hosting it. As well, we've got titanium and vanadium. I am told, also have uranium, although it's our neighbor Saskatchewan that is they are exporting 20% of the world's need for uranium, and I think they intend to continue to be a leader there. But it is also a trusted partnership that we have that extends into defense and aviation. Alberta is a national leader in unmanned systems with some of the world's top testing ranges. We're already helping to strengthen the British military. In fact, the UK has been in Alberta for more than 50 years. The British Army Training Unit happens to be in the constituency that I represent. You may have heard of Suffield, and that's the training base. We're also home to several Canadian Armed Forces bases in Alberta with unmatched expertise in cold weather operations. You're likely to hear more about Cold Lake, but certainly Edmonton and Wainwright as well. And this lets NATO nations test in near Arctic conditions. In civilian aviation, Alberta is drawing big investments from de Havilland. We had a partnership with Europe in buying the first 22 water bombers from de Havilland, and Germany's Lufthansa Technik that is going to be doing the refurbishment of engines out of a new facility that's set to break ground next year. They're also expanding our aircraft assembly, maintenance, and repair capabilities on a large scale. So we have a lot going in our favor. Alberta's on track to take the most of these advantages, and it's happening through close cooperation between the provinces, the federal government, Indigenous partners, and our allies, which of course includes the United Kingdom. So I look forward to this discussion today.
Thank you so much, Premier. Let's begin with energy, since this is where you also began. You outlined some of the strategy Alberta has in the near term and the medium term. Can you talk us through a bit the long-term strategy for Alberta's oil and gas production? You mentioned renewables as well. Yeah. What do those sources look like to you over time, and then who are those markets you're trying to reach?
Well, I think what we saw with the global disruption, first the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but then also the instability in the Strait of Hormuz, I think that's causing a lot of nations to recalibrate on some of their emissions reductions targets, and I think Canada is no exception. So one of the discussions I've been having with our new Prime Minister, Prime Minister Mark Carney, is how do we align ourselves around an emissions reduction target that is stretched out to 2050, which most of the nations of the world had initially started at, as a way of ensuring that we have a long enough time frame for innovation to get us there. I think one of the meeting of the minds that we have had is that if you try to compress dramatic emissions reduction in a short period of time without the technology for it, all you'll end up doing is shutting in your resources. So that's where I think the breakthrough is coming with the MOU that we had, is a recognition that we're in a world where we need more energy. We've got a twin challenge of managing emissions, but also addressing issues of global poverty. If you look at out to 2050, I think we've seen some estimates that we may need to grow to as much as 125 million barrels of oil by then. And we want to be a growing share of a growing market. I think also just because we have the ability to go in all directions, we do have an ability to be that secure supplier to Asia. We're already a secure supplier to the United States. Through the Gulf Coast, we can supply Europe, and there are also other options for us to do that. I look at natural gas, and we're hoping to make some grounds on this as well in Europe, because I think they're having a similar recalibration. Certainly around nuclear in some of the nations, but around natural gas as well, that if we want to have a leadership role in rolling out AI and data centers, it needs a secure supply of electricity. And how do you get that at scale quickly? At the moment, really, natural gas is the principal option. So what you'll see is that we believe that we're talking about an energy addition instead of an energy transition, that we want to have all sources of energy. We're going to need all sources of energy, and that there's technological means for us to address the emissions challenge.
So you're raising one of the debates that Canadians and the broader world are having about sustainability and environmental impact. Another debate Canadians are having are with First Nations communities, with the indigenous groups. Can you speak a little bit about how that conversation is going and where you see it headed?
We're very proud.
Who have come out in opposition to the pipeline plan right now to the west.
Well, I would say that there is an advocacy group funded by environmental foundations that have come out against oil and gas development, pipeline development. And we need to distinguish that from those who have elected and legitimate democratic support of their people. And the conversations are different. So I would say one of the things that we have done very well as a province is that we've pioneered an approach to underwriting loan guarantees so that Indigenous nations can take a stake in some large energy projects. So as a province, we've underwritten $750 million worth of loans for pipeline projects, for power plant projects, even most recently a solar project. And that allows for a long-term dividend stream to go to those nations, own source revenue, so that they can address the issues of poverty and other challenges on their reserve. And so we've led with that. It's been so successful that we've actually increased our ability to go up to $3 billion for a loan guarantee. The other provinces and the national government in Canada has done the same. So Ottawa has replicated this approach with a $10 billion loan guarantee. And this, to me, is going to be transformative to the nations, that when they can have their own source revenue, be a partner in developing these projects, assist us in finding the correct routes, addressing local environmental concerns and other concerns of historical significance, that to me is where the partnership is going to go. So we know that there's work to do. We're doing, because we want to build a pipeline to the BC coast. We have good relationships with our nations within the Alberta borders, so we're developing new relationships in British Columbia. But I have a minister who spends a lot of time in developing that out, and I'm very confident that once we start demonstrating the economic value, we will also have similar success that we've had in Alberta.
One of the pieces of this energy strategy is countries are not executing them in a vacuum from one another, right? Energy is deeply interlinked, and there's this concept of energy independence is a fiction in many ways, right? We are all connected. Prices rise and fall together. Supply affects all of us. And the U.S. In the past 15 months has put forward its own energy policy called energy dominance, which is a departure from past approaches where there is kind of unleashing of oil and gas production, of coal, of nuclear development, deregulation. And that has been kind of a proof point of how the U.S. has been able to insulate itself from a pricing perspective a bit more than others as the Iran war has unfolded. And so how has this affected Canada's calculus, Alberta's calculus, not just on the Iran war, but going back to how the U.S. is now approaching energy in a newly muscular way?
Well, I'm supportive of the U.S. aspiration for energy dominance. And the message that I say to our American trading partners and allies is that Canada really can be the backbone for supporting that. Because a lot of our brand of oil, the heavy oil, is different than the Americans' type of oil. And their refineries have been configured to accept our particular type of oil, to a point where there are certain refineries